The planet called Veradon did not shine in the night sky. It smoldered. Seen from the wide viewport of Emberhold's command hall, the world seemed to breathe, as if its atmosphere was a great lung inhaling storms and exhaling copper fire. Clouds rolled in sheets of rust-colored vapor, torn apart by the flashes of magnetic lightning that never ceased. Whole mountain ranges gleamed faintly even from orbit, their flanks melted into black glass by weapons that had scarred the planet in some forgotten age. Oceans that had once been vast and blue were shrunken things now, half-drained into subterranean chasms, their surfaces churned by storms that raged without pause. And yet, despite its wounds, Veradon endured. Commander Roan had grown accustomed to this sight, though it never ceased to fill him with unease. He had commanded Emberhold for 3 years, long enough to watch whole excavation projects rise and fail, long enough to bury names on casualty rosters until the pages blurred together. He knew the scars of Veradon better than he knew the lines of his own hands. Still, he rarely allowed himself to linger at the viewport. Looking too long meant dreaming, and the dreams Veradon offered were never kind. This night, if night it could be called, in a place where the sun was only a swollen ember behind storms, he lingered. The light painted his skin in hues of copper and shadow, catching against the pale scar that ran from his temple to his jawline. He touched it unconsciously as he stood there. The scar had not come from noble battle, but from negligence, a steel girder that slipped loose during Emberhold's construction, carving his face before he even earned command. He wore it as a reminder that death had no patience for pride. Behind him, the command hall buzzed with its usual rhythm. Consoles hummed, keys clacked, voices murmured as officers read out telemetry from orbiting drones and excavation sites below. The station was vast, 5 stacked tiers of steel and polymer, bristling with turrets, antennae, and docking arms like the spines of some colossal sea creature. It had been built to watch Veradon, to guard the dig teams that scoured its surface. At least that was the official purpose. Roan knew the truth. Emberhold was humanity's foot wedged into a door that was never meant to be opened. "Commander," a voice said. He turned. Navigator Sierra stood at her console, her face drawn into a frown that deepened the lines around her eyes. She was younger than Roan by 2 decades, but she carried herself with a composure that belied her years. Her voice always seemed gentler than the others, as though she had never learned how to shout above machinery, yet in its softness, Roan had often found the clearest warnings. "What is it?" Roan asked. "Signal flare in the outer belt," she replied. Her fingers moved deftly across her console, summoning a projection in the center of the hall. A ripple of red light traced across a holographic sphere, pulsing in rhythmic bursts. "Pattern is not ours." The room fell silent. Engineers glanced at one another. Soldiers shifted uneasily, their boots echoing too loud against the steel. Roan felt the weight of their stares, but he kept his eyes on the projection. "Show me its course," he said. The image sharpened. A sequence of bursts, each separated by 9 seconds, flickered across the map of Veradon's orbital debris. The origin point lay in the Shard Belt, a vast ring of stone and wreckage left from the planet's long-forgotten wars. The signal repeated with precision, unwavering. Roan's pulse quickened. Humanity had intercepted signals before, echoes of the ancient inhabitants of Veradon. Buried beacons sometimes shuddered awake when excavation crews disturbed them, sending streams of nonsense across comm bands until their power died again. But those had been decaying whispers, never deliberate. This was deliberate. Could it be automated debris? Roan asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative," Sierra said. "Readings suggest a contained source. Power is steady, mobile." The silence that followed pressed down on the command hall like gravity. For decades, humans had convinced themselves that Veradon's silence was permission, that the world was nothing but a graveyard, its builders long gone. Yet now, silence was broken. Roan turned to his officers, his expression carved from iron. "Alert the hangar. Prepare a launch wing. I want eyes on it before the cycle turns." Murmurs spread through the hall. Lieutenant Mek, head of security, frowned. With respect, Commander, we should inform the Central Fleet before engaging. Protocol dictates we act before panic spreads, Roan interrupted. His voice carried the weight of command, leaving no room for argument. This does not leave the hall until I order it. If there is something out there, we face it first. Mayek's jaw clenched, but he gave a sharp nod. Orders rippled down the chain of command. Within minutes, Emberhold stirred like a living beast, hangars opening, crews racing to shuttles. Roan remained at the viewport a moment longer. Below, Veradan's storms writhed, lightning clawing at the clouds, as though the planet itself sought escape. He wondered, not for the first time, whether humanity had erred by coming here. The copper storms seemed to whisper back, though perhaps it was only his imagination. Beneath those storms, ruins lay buried, ruins that had not forgotten. The shuttle named Resolute broke free of Emberhold's docks with the grace of a spear hurled from the hand of a giant. The docking arms released it with a shudder, and the vessel's engines thrummed to life, sending waves of vibration through its hull. Its silver plating caught the faint light of the dying star at the system's edge, a single glimmer of warmth in an otherwise pitiless void. Commander Roan stood behind the pilot's chair, hands clasped behind his back, steady as if the shifting of artificial gravity could not touch him. He had chosen to accompany the expedition himself, despite every protest from his officers. To them, it was reckless for a commander to leave the station, but Roan believed otherwise. Fear, if left to breed unchecked, ate into men's hearts like acid. If he demanded courage of his people, he would share their risk. The cabin of the Resolute was small but crowded with 12 souls, soldiers in pale armor that shimmered faintly in the dim light, engineers wrapped in grease-stained flight suits, and at the front, pilot Jorin hunched over his controls. Jorin's jaw was set as though chiseled from stone, his eyes fixed on the shard belt that lay ahead. The belt was no simple field of rocks. It was a graveyard, a ring of jagged stone and alien debris that circled Veradan like the shattered teeth of a predator. Lightning arced from fragment to fragment, pulled by the planet's magnetic storms, illuminating the void with flashes of cold fire. Course plotted, Jorin said, his voice flat. But the debris is unstable. We'll be weaving. Do what must be done, Roan answered. He let his gaze linger on the display, where the target shimmered as a flickering dot, pulsing in that strange 9-second rhythm. The signal had not altered once since its discovery, and somehow its persistence unsettled him more than any change could have. Behind him, Navigator Sira adjusted her headset. She had insisted on joining the shuttle crew as well, despite protests that her skills would be more valuable aboard Emberhold. If the signal speaks, she had said quietly, then someone must listen. Now she sat scanning waves of data, her brow furrowed in concentration. Her console emitted a steady trickle of sound, clicks and hums, translating the pulses into audible rhythms. The pattern was almost hypnotic. One of the soldiers shifted uneasily in his harness. Feels like it's calling us. His comrade elbowed him. Don't start. Quiet, Roan said sharply. Silence fell again, broken only by the hiss of circulation systems and the low growl of the engines. Minutes stretched as they entered the shard belt. The shuttle danced between tumbling boulders, Jorin's hands steady on the controls. Chunks of stone, some no larger than fists, others the size of towers, rotated endlessly, their surfaces scarred with impact craters. Occasionally, Roan glimpsed flashes of unnatural metal embedded in the rock, remnants of war, or perhaps ruins pulled from Veradan in ages past. The dot on the display grew closer. At first it was only a flicker, then it became form. A craft emerged from the shadows, gliding between asteroids with impossible precision. Its surface was black as obsidian, drinking in the faint starlight until it seemed more shadow than substance. Unlike human vessels, it bore no thruster exhaust, no seams, no markings of manufacture. It moved as though it had no need of propulsion at all, carried by a will older than the storms themselves. The pulse emanated from its core, each burst of light rippling across the shard belt in waves. To human eyes, it was not threatening, not even weapon-like, merely steady calm, yet that calmness was what made it dreadful, as though the craft had no need to display force. "There," Jorin muttered. The crew leaned forward, breath held. Roan's voice cut through their silence. "Transmit our presence." Sierra hesitated. "Commander, if it is hostile, better we show an open hand than a clenched fist," Roan replied firmly. "Transmit." Her fingers trembled slightly as she obeyed, sending a simple beacon: identification, intent of observation, declaration of peaceful approach. It was the oldest, most basic protocol of human contact in the void. For several long moments, nothing changed. The alien craft remained silent. Then abruptly, its pulse shifted. 9-second bursts became 6, then 3, then a steady glow. "It is acknowledging," Sierra whispered. The shuttle trembled as the alien craft rotated, exposing its underside. There, etched into its smooth black surface, patterns burned into view, spirals within spirals, glowing blue against the darkness. They were not letters, not numbers, at least not as humanity knew them. They looked alive, like the growth rings of ancient trees or ripples spreading endlessly across water. "Is that writing?" Jorin asked hoarsely. "Not writing," Sierra murmured, her voice almost reverent. "Life, a pattern of life." Before anyone could respond, the craft moved. It darted toward the Resolute with such speed that alarms shrieked in protest. The soldiers unlatched weapons instinctively, though all knew that firing in vacuum would be useless. The alien vessel stopped mere meters from their hull, close enough that its spirals bathed the shuttle in light. A seam split open on its surface. From within spilled light, controlled, deliberate, forming a narrow beam that struck the shuttle's viewport. The crew flinched, shielding their eyes, but the light did not blind. It bent and twisted upon the glass, refracting until symbols took shape. Not human symbols, not sound, but forms older than anything humanity had encountered, shapes that shimmered with layered meaning beyond comprehension. Sierra gasped, "It is speaking." No one moved, no one breathed. Roan stepped forward, staring into the cascade of alien signs. He felt in some corner of his mind that the patterns pressed into him like fingers pressing clay, shaping thoughts he could not yet name. "Record everything," he ordered, his voice barely steady. "Every flicker, every change, this will change everything." The light continued, weaving symbol after symbol, spirals within spirals that seemed endless. Sierra's console shrieked as it struggled to keep pace with the data stream. Sweat glistened on her brow as she scrambled to catalog it all. One of the soldiers whispered hoarsely, "Commander, what if it's a warning?" Roan did not turn. His eyes never left the spirals. "Then we had best learn what it warns of." The symbols shifted, brightening, growing sharper. Sierra's fingers froze on her console, her mouth parting in astonishment. "What is it?" Roan demanded. She swallowed. "It's repeating one sequence more often than the rest, over and over again." "What does it say?" Her voice was unsteady. "Sentinel." The light pulsed once, as if in confirmation. For the first time since its appearance, the alien craft seemed less like a shadow and more like a presence, an ancient witness that had waited in silence until humanity trespassed upon its grave. The Resolute drifted in its glow, 12 souls caught between awe and terror, as the last truth of the moment settled like a stone in their chests. Humanity had not found ruins. Humanity had been found. The alien craft followed them back. It did not attach itself or tether with mechanical arms. It simply drifted in the Resolute's wake, as though bound by some invisible thread. It neither lagged behind nor pressed forward, its distance constant, its movements effortless. A wolf pacing a caravan, never striking, never retreating. Ahead, Emberhold loomed, a vast crown of steel and alloy suspended above Veradon's copper storms. Its spires glowed faintly, each one a docking arm or defense turret, each one bristling with antennae that clawed at the void in search of meaning. Normally, Emberhold appeared to Roan as a symbol of human resilience, a bastion against the silence of space. Now, with Sentinel gliding behind them like a shadow that could not be shaken, the station looked fragile, almost childlike, as though it had been built from scrap, wood rather than reinforced hull plating. As the Resolute approached the docking array, alarms shrieked across the station. Red strobes washed through every corridor, sirens howled through the ventilation shafts, and the voice of Lieutenant Mech thundered over the comms. Unidentified vessel detected on approach. All units to alert status. Defensive batteries primed. Roan stood in the shuttle's hatchway, his expression carved from stone. He knew the station was preparing to fire. He knew panic would be devouring discipline in every hall, in every chamber. Soldiers would be sprinting to stations, engineers slamming bulkheads shut, civilians whispering prayers into their palms. Emberhold had lived in silence for years, guarding a dead planet. Now the silence was broken, and with it, the illusion of safety. When the docking clamps seized the Resolute with a metallic groan, the alien craft halted just beyond the shimmering curve of Emberhold's shields. It hovered there, a shadow against the stars. Then, as though sensing the station's fear, it pulsed. A wave of blue light washed over the docking bay, filling it with spiraling symbols. The soldiers who had gathered at the edge of the bay flinched, some raising weapons, others muttering curses. "It knows," Sierra whispered, stepping to Roan's side. "It knows we fear it, and it waits." Roan's jaw tightened. He strode to the nearest comm terminal, stabbing the broadcast key with his scarred hand. His voice thundered across every corridor of Emberhold. "All personnel stand down. This vessel has not fired upon us. You will not fire upon it." The words clashed with the rising tide of panic, but they carried the weight of authority. Roan had commanded Emberhold long enough that his voice alone could bend hesitation into reluctant obedience. In the hours that followed, they established a fragile rhythm of exchange. Sentinel would project spirals of light etched into the void itself. Emberhold would reply with crude attempts at translation, streams of light and tone arranged in patterns. It was a child's dialogue compared to the alien complexity, but somehow Sentinel tolerated it. From those halting exchanges, fragments of truth emerged. The vessel was unmanned, though unmanned was an inadequate word. It carried no crew because it was itself the crew, a construct of memory, its will forged from something beyond machinery. It named itself Sentinel, though Sierra cautioned that name was too small a concept for what it meant. Sentinel was not a title, but a role, an essence. And Sentinel told them of the veil. At first Roan assumed veil was metaphor, some grandiose symbol of extinction. But as the spirals repeated, as their translations grew sharper, the meaning grew undeniable. The veil was real, a force unlike any human weapon, woven over Veradon by powers unknown. It had blanketed the planet in storms and fire, swallowing whole cities, sealing them as though behind curtains of copper and ash. Not destroyed, hidden, erased from sight, but not from existence. Sentinel's spirals spoke of its purpose: to endure when the veil fell, to awaken when trespassers came, to guard, to warn, to judge. Arguments erupted in Emberhold's upper chambers. Roan convened his senior officers in the circular briefing hall, where the air always smelled faintly of rust and coolant. They crowded around the table, voices sharp with fear and ambition. Lieutenant Mech slammed his fist against the steel. "We should destroy it, now, before it calls others down on us, and waste the greatest discovery in human history," Engineer Kalen shot back. "Are you blind? This vessel carries knowledge older than our species. We could spend lifetimes deciphering a fraction of what it knows." "Knowledge that could kill us," Mech snarled. "Knowledge that could save us," Kalen replied. The hall filled with overlapping voices, shouts of warning, pleas for caution, demands for power. Roan let them rage for a time, standing silently at the head of the table. Only when their voices became hoarse did he speak. "Enough." The single word cut the air. The officers fell silent. "We cannot destroy what we do not understand," Roan said. "Nor can we pretend it does not exist. If we run, it will follow. If we attack, we may provoke something far worse. We will study it, we will listen, and until I say otherwise, we will remain silent to the rest of the fleet." Mayek's jaw flexed with fury. "Commander," Roan's gaze snapped to him, sharp as drawn steel, I will not repeat myself. The lieutenant bit back his retort. When the meeting dispersed, Roan lingered. Sierra remained at his side, her expression unreadable. You believe it is a test, she said softly once they were alone. Roan did not answer at once. He stared at the projection of Veradon, storms curling like ink in water. It did not come to destroy us, not yet. It came to see us, to weigh us. And if we are found wanting? Sierra asked. Roan finally turned to her. His scar caught the blue light of the projection, making it seem like his face was split in two, one half shadow, one half fire. Then we had better learn how to want more, he said. That night Roan dreamed. He dreamed of Veradon's surface, though he had only ever seen it through filtered lenses and distant transmissions. He dreamed of towers half buried in glass, their peaks clawing upward as if reaching for mercy. He dreamed of storm clouds parting, not to reveal the sun, but to reveal blackness, a void deeper than space itself, stretching like a wound across the sky. And in that wound, eyes opened, not human eyes, not even alien in a way he could name. Just eyes vast enough to see not him, but all of humanity, as if their entire history were a flicker of light in the palm of a hand. He woke with his chest heaving, his throat raw. The copper storm still glowed below. Sentinels still drifted outside the shields, patient, waiting. And Roan, for the first time since taking command of Emberhold, felt the weight of a truth he could not yet voice. This was no relic, no echo, no accident. This was judgment, written in the language of stars. The first sign did not come from the skies, but from the earth. It began as a tremor in the excavation valleys, small enough that engineers dismissed it as shifting stone. Veradon's crust was unstable, riddled with fissures and veins of glass. Quakes were not uncommon, but this tremor did not fade, it grew. Within hours, excavation outposts across the northern hemisphere reported fissures opening in the ridges, copper storms intensifying, equipment shorting from surges in electromagnetic force. Camps that had stood for years were swallowed whole, their prefabricated walls collapsing into chasms that yawned wider with every heartbeat. From Emberhold, Roan watched the reports flood in. The command hall filled with overlapping voices, status updates, pleas for guidance. Red icons blinked across the planetary projection, each one a site lost, each one a cluster of human lives unaccounted for. Storm activity tripled in the past cycle, Sierra reported, her voice taut with strain. We've lost 37% of surface comms. Another 6 outposts are dark. Roan's hands tightened behind his back. Any sign of attack? Negative, Sierra said. She hesitated, then added, unless the planet itself is attacking. The words hung in the air, absurd yet undeniable. Lieutenant Mack stalked across the hall like a caged animal, his boots striking sparks on the steel. I warned you, Commander. That construct Sentinel, it has called something down. We've provoked forces we cannot. Hold your tongue, Roan snapped. His voice silenced the hall. We have no proof this is Sentinel's doing. Mayek's eyes flashed. And what would you call proof? Outposts torn apart, storms beyond anything our instruments have recorded. This is not chance, it is reaction. Engineer Kalen interjected, his voice raw from sleepless nights. Reaction, yes, but not destruction. The spires that are rising, they're not weapons, they're structures. We've captured feeds. Look. He cast his data onto the central dais. The holographic projection bloomed with jagged towers of black stone, each one forcing its way upward through Veradon's surface. Valleys split open to birth them, ridges crumbled as they rose. Their flanks glowed with spirals of blue fire, identical to the markings on Sentinel's hull. From their peaks, beams of light lanced skyward, piercing the copper storms like spears. Transmission towers? Sierra asked softly. More than that, Kalen said. His fingers danced across controls, bringing up readings of gravitational flux and magnetic distortion. They're shaping the planet's field. Synchronizing it. To what end? Roan demanded. Kalen hesitated. To open something. The words drew a chill through the hall. Roan's gaze snapped to Sentinel, still visible beyond the viewport, its spirals pulsing faster than before. Translate, he ordered. Sierra bent over her console. Her lips moved silently as she mapped symbol to symbol, meaning to half-meaning. Finally she looked up, her face pale. "It speaks of the veil," she whispered. "It says the veil was never meant to last forever, that it is unraveling, that it is opening." A hush fell. Even Meg did not speak. Roan's chest tightened. "Opening to what?" Sierra's answer was scarcely audible. "To what lies beyond." The lattice of spires multiplied. Within a single cycle, half the northern hemisphere bristled with them, their blue beams forming a web that crawled across the sky. Where their light struck the upper atmosphere, the copper clouds parted, not to reveal the sun, but to reveal something else. Blackness. Not the black of space, which shimmered with distant stars, but a void deeper than night. A wound torn across the heavens. Through that wound, whispers bled. Not sound, not language, but vibrations so deep that even Emberhold's hull shuddered in sympathy. Crew reported headaches, nightmares, hallucinations of cities burning and seas boiling. Roan convened his officers once more. The briefing hall reeked of fear masked by sweat. "This is not sustainable," Mac said, his voice ragged but fierce. "We must evacuate. Abandon the planet, abandon the station, retreat to the fleet. If we remain, we die. And abandon everything we've learned," Kalen countered. His hands trembled as he held up data slates, as though the numbers themselves might shield him. "Do you not see? The veil, it was a prison, something sealed away Veradon. But these spires, they are undoing that seal. For the first time in millennia, we have a chance to witness what was hidden. If we leave, we may never know." "Better ignorance than annihilation," Mech snarled. Their voices clashed, echoing off steel. Roan let them rage until silence fell. Then he spoke. "Evacuation is not possible," he said flatly. "The storms make surface retrieval impossible. Our engines would tear free of their mounts if we attempted to break orbit now. We are here, and here we remain. So the question is not whether we leave, but how we survive what comes." Kalen's eyes gleamed with desperate hope. Mech's burned with fury. Roan ignored them both and turned to Sierra. "What does Sentinel say of this?" She shook her head slowly. "It says little. Its messages are fragmented, almost frantic. Words like guardians, return, judgment. I do not know if it warns us or prepares us." That night, the tremors shook even Emberhold. Roan lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling as vibrations hummed through the hull. The copper storms below boiled more violently than he had ever seen, lightning crawling across entire continents in branching webs of fire. Sleep came only in fragments, and with it came visions. He dreamed again of the spires, their beams stitching the sky into a cage of light. He dreamed of the veil, tearing open like fabric stretched beyond its limits. And through that tear, shapes moved, vast, serpentine, woven of living metal. They flowed like rivers made flesh, their eyes burning with storms. He woke with his throat raw, his hands clenched into fists. When he returned to the command hall, the nightmare awaited him in truth. The veil had opened wider. From its depths, shapes emerged. Not ships, not as humanity understood them. They were arcs of metal that rippled as though alive, bending and folding upon themselves with contempt for physics. They moved without thrusters, without flame, without sound. They moved as though the void itself obeyed their will. The crew of Emberhold stared in silence, horror etched into every face. Sentinel pulsed furiously, its spirals jagged and broken, as though screaming in light. Sierra's voice trembled as she translated. "Guardians, return, judgment." Roan felt his chest tighten, his mind struggling to accept the truth. Humanity had not stumbled upon ruins. They had broken open a seal, and now the jailers of Veradon's past had returned to weigh the trespassers who dared disturb their domain. The Guardians did not announce themselves with words. They arrived in silence, sliding through the wound in the sky like predators breaching a dark sea. The copper storms parted around them, their lightning bending to caress the curves of their bodies as if recognizing old masters. Each one was vast, shaped like an arc of living metal, scales shimmering with rivers of light. They moved without haste, but every motion carried inevitability, like mountains drifting through the void. There were six 6 guardians for one world, one station, one fragile species clinging to survival. Emberhold trembled as proximity alarms screamed through its corridors. Soldiers scrambled to defense batteries, engineers bolted panels shut, and families huddled in prayer inside the civilian rings. The station had been built to endure storms, not gods. From the command hall, Roan watched the projections bloom across the hollow table. 6 arcs, each dwarfing the Resolute, drifting into high orbit. Their spirals pulsed the same way Sentinel's had, but where Sentinel's light was measured, careful, these burned like wildfire, patterns too fast for human eyes, too jagged for calm. "Commander," Lieutenant Mech said hoarsely, "they are surrounding us." The hollow confirmed it. The 6 arcs had taken positions equidistant from Emberhold, forming a ring. Their bodies glowed with spirals that shifted in unison, weaving a lattice of light that closed like a snare. Sierra bent over her console, her face pale, her lips whispering half-formed translations. "They are speaking to Sentinel, not to us. It is an argument." Roan's scarred brow furrowed. "An argument?" "Yes," she whispered. Sentinel pulses back at them, slow, deliberate. They respond with fury. Their spirals are sharper, like blades. The Guardians' light bled across Emberhold's hull. Panels flickered, sensors failed. The entire station groaned as if caught between tides. "Commander," Engineer Kalen said, his voice shaking, "if they increase output, our shields will collapse." Mayek slammed his fist on the railing. "We should strike first." "Show them we are not prey." "With what?" Kalen snapped. "Kinetic rounds, flak cannons, do you not see their scale? Better to die fighting than waiting," Mech snarled. Roan's voice cut through them like steel. "Enough." He turned to Sierra. "If Sentinel speaks for us, then we must trust it. Translate what you can. If there is any chance of reaching them, any chance at all, we take it." Sierra's fingers flew across her console. Symbols danced across the hollow table. "The Guardians accuse, they say Sentinel has failed, that it has allowed intruders to break the veil. That judgment must fall." "Judgment," Mech spat. "We knew this was coming." But Sierra's voice rose. "Sentinel resists them. It argues we should be spared. It says we are young, that we must be measured differently." For a heartbeat, silence held the hall. Then the Guardians moved. Light erupted from their bodies, a storm of spirals unleashed as beams of raw force. The first slammed into Emberhold's shields, rattling the station like a struck bell. Alarms wailed. Metal screamed. Soldiers clung to railings as artificial gravity faltered. "Shields at 60%, Kalen cried. Another strike followed, then another. Blue fire lanced across the void, each impact tearing at the fragile bubble that kept them alive. Emberhold groaned as though it were a living beast under torture. Roan gripped the railing, knuckles white. "Return fire, all batteries." The order rippled through the station. Kinetic turrets roared, flinging streams of high-velocity slugs into the void. Missile silos cracked open, streaks of fire arcing toward the Guardians. For a moment the void blazed with human defiance. The slugs struck, the missiles burst, and the Guardians did not flinch. Their bodies absorbed the impacts as if they were raindrops striking oceans. Energy rippled across their surfaces, spirals brightening with every hit. To strike them was to feed them. "Commander," Kalen shouted over the alarms. "Our weapons empower them." The Guardians pulsed brighter, closing the ring tighter. Shields shrieked, collapsing sector by sector. Emberhold was being strangled, its defenses unraveling. Roan's mind raced. Every instinct screamed to fight, to resist, to rage. But another instinct, the colder one, the one honed by years of survival, cut through the fire. If weapons fed them, then weapons were meaningless. They had to speak. "Sierra," he barked, "patch me through to them, now." Her eyes widened. "Commander, they do not." Now, her trembling fingers obeyed. The comm system crackled, translating crude pulses of light into audio bursts. Roan seized the microphone, his scarred face lit by the glow of collapsing shields. "Guardians," his voice thundered through the hall, through every speaker on Emberhold. "Hear me." The spirals did not falter. "We are not your enemy," Roan shouted. "We did not come to conquer, but to learn. We did not tear the veil by choice, it tore before us. If you demand judgment, then judge me and me alone, leave the rest. The station held its breath. The Guardians' spirals slowed. Just slightly, their beams dimmed. Sierra gasped. They are listening. Roan pressed on, his voice steady though his heart hammered. Sentinel has watched us. It has seen we are not destroyers, but seekers. If there is debt, it is mine. If there is fault, it is mine. But my people, my species, they deserve a chance to rise. The Guardians pulsed again, faster this time. Sierra's console screamed with data. Her eyes flickered across the symbols, lips moving as she parsed meaning. They say, her voice faltered, they say sacrifice proves worth, that a leader's death can weigh against a people's survival. Mayek straightened, his face alight with grim satisfaction. Then the path is clear. But before Roan could respond, Sentinel moved. For the first time since its awakening, the ancient vessel broke from its patient orbit. It surged forward, interposing itself between Emberhold and the Guardians. Its spirals flared blindingly bright, cascading patterns of defiance. Sierra's voice rose above the alarms. It refuses them. It says the judgment is not yet decided, that humanity has not been weighed fully. The Guardians answered with fury. Their beams lashed out, striking Sentinel with force that could shatter moons. The ancient vessel convulsed, its surface fracturing, spirals tearing, but it did not fall. It absorbed the blows, its glow dimming but enduring. Emberhold's crew stared in awe. They are fighting each other, Kalen whispered. The Guardians encircled Sentinel, lashing it with storms of light. Sentinel pulsed back, slower, steadier, as though anchoring itself against a tide. Its body cracked, fragments drifting into the void, yet still it endured. Roan's chest tightened. He saw in Sentinel not a machine, not a relic, but a choice to stand between humanity and annihilation. He seized the comm again. Sentinel, his voice rang raw, desperate. If you can hear us, if you can understand, tell them, show them what we are, show them we will not break. Sentinel pulsed once, twice. Then its spirals flared brighter than ever before. The Guardians staggered, their beams faltered. The ring loosened. Sierra's console overflowed with symbols. Her voice shook as she translated. It is showing them us, our history. Our wars, our resilience, our search for meaning. Everything we are, it pours into their light. The Guardians writhed as though struck by visions. Their spirals twisted, clashing, uncertain. For the first time, their fury fractured. And then, with a soundless shudder, one of them withdrew. It curved away from the ring, spirals dimming, and drifted back toward the wound in the sky. The others hesitated. Then a second withdrew. Only 4 remained. But Sentinel was failing. Its glow flickered, its body split by cracks that leaked fire into the void. It could not endure much longer. Commander, Kalen whispered, horror in his eyes, it is dying. Roan's throat tightened. He placed a hand against the viewport, as though he could reach across the void to touch the vessel that had shielded them. Sentinel pulsed one final time, its spirals slow and solemn. Sierra's voice broke as she translated. It says, remember. Then Sentinel burst apart. The light consumed the void, washing across Emberhold in a wave of brilliance. The Guardians recoiled, their spirals shattering into chaos. 2 more withdrew, vanishing into the wound. Only 2 remained, circling, hesitant, their fury broken by sacrifice. When the light faded, nothing remained of Sentinel but drifting fragments. Emberhold hung in silence. Shields flickered weakly, systems groaned, but the station still lived. Humanity still lived. Roan lowered his hand, his scar catching the last glimmers of alien fire. His voice was hoarse but resolute. We are not done, he said. Not yet. The Guardians drifted, undecided. Judgment had not fallen. But the price had been paid in light and fire. And somewhere, in the copper storms below, the veil continued to tear. The fragments of Sentinel drifted like embers across the void, shards of obsidian and fire carried by the weightless currents of space. Some pieces glowed faintly with dying spirals, others faded into cold stone. Emberhold's crew watched them fall into orbit, silent as mourners at a graveside. 2 Guardians remained. They circled the station slowly, arcs of living metal glimmering against the wound in the sky. Their spirals no longer burned with fury, but neither did they dim with peace. They pulsed in uneasy rhythm, as though debating whether to strike again or withdraw like their kin. The command hall was heavy with grief. No one spoke for long moments. Even Mek, usually quick to rage, stood motionless, jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on the drifting debris of the protector they had not deserved. It was Sira who broke the silence. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "Sentinel gave itself for us. If that sacrifice means anything, we must not falter now. We must face them." Kalen wiped a trembling hand across his face. "How? Our weapons empower them. Our shields are ruined. We have no sentinel to shield us. What do we have left?" Roan's answer was simple, cold, and unyielding. "Ourselves." He turned from the viewport, facing the circle of his officers. "We cannot match their power, but we can show them what sentinels saw in us. Not weapons, not storms, but endurance. Unity, the refusal to surrender, no matter the scale of what stands before us." Mayek's voice rasped. "You want to bare our throats and hope they do not cut?" "No," Roan said. "I want to bare our will and show them it cannot be cut." The decision rippled through Emberhold like fire through dry grass. Every corridor filled with movement as crews secured bulkheads, rerouted power, and patched holes with their bare hands. Families in the civilian ring carried water and supplies to soldiers. Engineers shared rations with children. No one asked for survival. They asked only for the chance to stand. Roan broadcast across the station, his scarred face stark against the glow of emergency lamps. His voice carried into every chamber, every heart. "We have seen powers beyond comprehension. We have stood before judgment older than our species, and still we are here, not because of shields, not because of weapons, because we refuse to fall. That is what we will show them, not despair, defiance." The words spread through Emberhold. Soldiers who had trembled found their grips firm. Engineers who had cursed their fate returned to consoles with burning eyes. Civilians who had prayed in silence now prayed aloud, not for deliverance, but for the strength to endure. The Guardians pulsed. Their spirals lashed the void faster and sharper. Their debate with each other grew louder, patterns striking and clashing like blades. Then, at last, one arc stilled. Its spirals dimmed into calm. Slowly, it drifted back toward the wound in the sky and vanished into its darkness. Only one remained. The last Guardian hung in orbit, vast and terrible, its spirals blazing with indecision. Then it turned its gaze upon Emberhold. The void ignited. A beam of blue fire lanced forth, slamming against what was left of the station's shields. They shattered instantly. The beam struck hull plating, searing metal, tearing through outer rings. Alarms wailed. Bulkheads collapsed. Emberhold groaned as atmosphere vented into space. Still, the station did not break. Crew flooded to patch the breaches, sealing them with makeshift barriers. Families carried supplies through choking smoke. Soldiers formed human chains to move the wounded. Every strike tore at them, but every strike was met with hands that built, voices that shouted, bodies that stood in the way of fire. Kalen screamed reports through the chaos. Section 12 collapsed, but we are rerouting, power conduits stabilizing, life support holding at 60%. Mayek bellowed orders to soldiers, his voice raw. "Hold the line, brace those beams, no one flees, no one falters." And at the center of it all stood Roan. His voice roared across the comms, steady as steel. "Endure, every breath, every heartbeat, make them see us." The Guardian struck again. Again Emberhold bled. Again its people stood. The void became a crucible, the station hammered again and again. Yet through fire and ruin, humanity did not crumble. Then something changed. The Guardian's spirals faltered. Their rhythm slowed. Its great body trembled as though confusion rippled through its living metal. It unleashed one final beam, but weaker, scattered. Then it stilled, hanging silent in the void. Sira's console flickered with spirals. Her voice trembled as she translated. It says we endure, that we are not prey, that we are seed." The Guardian pulsed once, a final flare of light that washed over Emberhold. Then it turned away, drifting toward the wound in the sky. With a soundless ripple, it passed through the veil and was gone. For the first time in countless cycles, Veradon's skies were empty. Silence held the station. Silence heavier than any storm. Emberhold hung battered, scarred, bleeding air and fire, but alive. Its shields were gone, its weapons twisted, its spires blackened. Yet within its broken hull, voices rose, not in fear but in awe. They had endured. Roan stood at the viewport, staring at the wound in the sky. It still lingered, vast and dark, spiraling with storms of blue light. But the Guardians were gone. He spoke softly, his voice carrying only to those beside him. They weighed us, and we are not found wanting. Sierra's eyes glistened. What now? Roan's gaze did not leave the wound. Now we build, we endure, and when the veil opens again, when judgment returns, we will be ready. He placed his scarred hand against the glass, watching the drifting fragments of Sentinel burn faintly against the void. Remember, he whispered, and the station, the people, the species remembered. Far below, Veradon's storms raged on, but where once they had been prison walls, now they were heralds. The veil had been torn, and though the wound sealed slowly, it did not close entirely. Something beyond had seen humanity, something vast, ancient, terrible, and it had left them alive, not because they were strong. Not because they were wise, but because, when tested, they had endured. The future lay unwritten, judgment would come again, but for now the void was silent, and in that silence humanity breathed.